PMB, which is clearly done by the government in order to facilitate railroading through contentious legislation before the Dáil goes into recess. And the PMB is about cuts to lone parents, and yet the government is moving that in order to prioritise even more austerity on hard-pressed citizens. The punitive measures to cut allowances for lone parents will come in tomorrow. 30,000 families will be affected by this. Many of them will be pushed into further poverty. And I'm sure the Taoiseach knows that among the most vulnerable people in our society, and I would remind you that the CSO figures show that 63% of lone parent families are living without basic necessities. The Taoiseach has said, in another broken promise, that these cuts would not be enacted without affordable childcare and after-school care. These provisions are not in place. Rather than have a proper debate around these matters, you jiggle and you jig with the claw of the Dáil to allow you to bring in other measures which, as I've said, will facilitate the passage of legislation that will penalise people into paying water charges which they cannot afford. So I think it's a very, very bad way to deal with the Dáil business, and it shows nothing but contempt for both the backbenchers here, but also particularly for the opposition TDs.
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, I think the important thing is that the Sinn Féin party are perfectly entitled to put down their private member's motion, and that's on one-parent family payment scheme. It's not the first time that there have been changes to the order of business. The important thing is that you, as the leader of your party, and your members are perfectly entitled to make their case during private members' time, and there will be the opportunity to vote on that, as is a normal procedure as part of private members' time. I think that's the important thing. It doesn't show either contempt or anything for members. It allows, as part of the process here, that your party are fully entitled to have private members' time. You choose what that is, and your speakers have the opportunity to make their case. So it's just a rearrangement of the business, but your business is an important part of that, and I'm quite sure that Deputy MacDonald's voice will be heard as part of that.
Thank you. So I'm now putting the question. The question is that the proposal for dealing with the late sitting be agreed to. Shock to you. Sorry. Please, members. Deputy Jerry Adams. Please. Now, please, we've finished that.
Ga question, the Marriage Equality Bill, August Cunnawain the Civil Debt Procedures Bill, and I'll deal with that Ardús Taoiseach. In this bill, which is up for debate tomorrow, the Civil Debt Procedures Bill, it will allow creditors, including Irish Water, to apply for a court order that enables the attachment of earnings or deductions from social welfare payments for the purpose of the enforcement of debt. Now, the government have brought this forward without adhering to normal Dáil pre-legislative procedures. They failed to publish the heads of the bill. They failed to allow it to go to the committee for consideration by stakeholders. They failed to allow a minimum of 2 weeks for officers to scrutinise the bill upon publication. And we only got sight of a draft of the bill last Friday, and then that was changed on Monday. And this is really an underhand method, Taoiseach, to force through the Dáil a bill that will pick the pockets of low-paid workers and people on social welfare and force more people into poverty. So I would ask you to reconsider the position that you have taken up, and to allow normal procedures. You were talking earlier on about democracy to prevail, to publish the heads of the bill, to allow it to go to the committee, and to allow proper scrutiny by the relevant offices. In terms of the Marriage Equality Bill, the government said quite rightly that you could not publish this because of a court case. Now, it now appears that the case has to go before the Supreme Court, and it could be a year before the first same-sex citizens are able to marry. And I accept entirely the right of citizens to go to the courts. But it does strike me that the time involved is very, very lengthy, and particularly given that this was not just a piece of legislation here in the Dáil, but it was also a referendum by the people. So Padraig McLaughlin and I have given a draft bill to the Bills Office to amend the Referendum Act 1994 to provide for a statutory time frame for 90 days within which referendum petitions must be heard and decided by the courts, and we intend to bring that forward next week. So I want to ask you, will the government consider, on side of this, supporting this bill? And finally, if the Supreme Court upholds the referendum result, how soon do you expect the Marriage Equality Bill to be published after that?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Yeah, well, in respect to the civil debt bill, as I said, the government are moving here because of the body of work done by the Law Reform Commission, which set out a great deal of opportunity not to have people sent to jail for very small debts, and to expand that beyond one particular entity and have it for civil debt, which would apply across the board. And I think that's very progressive. And that's already been worked upon for quite a long time, and government are just building on that foundation, which is the civil debt bill before the House, and that will proceed ahead. In regard to the marriage equality bill, Deputy, I think we need to be very careful here. You spoke earlier about the will of the people, and the people expressed their will in a referendum on the question and gave a resounding yes to the question. Now, I'm constrained here in what I say, because there is clearly a separation of powers between the Oireachtas and the courts. Your bill, which I'm sure is well intended from Deputy McLaughlin, or if the government decided to publish the bill and to put it through the House here, would be a direct affront to the judicial independence of the judiciary. We can't go there. You can argue whether the people, having decided by vote in a referendum, express their will. People take cases before the court. It's due, I think, on the 30th of July. I can't interfere in that process, and I have no intention of it. So we're bound, Deputy McLaughlin, by the complete and utter independence of the judiciary and the court system. And we will not interfere in any way. And you cannot give directions to the court.
Sorry.
No, Deputy McLaughlin, we might all wish that when the referendum was over and passed by the people, that it was left that way. But people have a right to take court cases, and it is not for us or for you or for the House here to direct the courts what to do. Don't go there, because it's complete separation of powers here. So the government would be anxious, Deputy, to move ahead with this legislation as quickly as possible and have it enacted, so that when those of the communities who wish to get married can give 3 months' notice, that it will be applicable by the year end. So I cannot predict the outcome of the court decision, nor would I speculate on that. So the bill is ready to go from our point of view, but my advice is that it would be very wrong for the Oireachtas here to proceed ahead with this bill in advance of the court making its decision. So I'm sorry, Deputy Adams, that I can't be any more explicit about it.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Yep.
I thank you for your answer, Taoiseach, but I just want to reiterate the point that Taoiseach McLaughlin was making, and I did say in my remarks that we respected absolutely and uphold the right of citizens to go to the court. So we're not seeking to interfere with the court system, or indeed to in any way intrude into the separation between the judiciary and the Oireachtas. But there does seem to be an unfortunate, mightn't be the intention, but an unfortunate over-lengthy time for dealing with this issue, and we simply want to bring forward for consideration a proposition which time frames, not interferes with, but time frames the process.
Thank you. Okay.
If you try to give a direction to court X or Y to say you must decide this by such a date, how do you know the arguments that are going to arise? How do you know the other objections or elements that may be raised there? It's just not. You just can't do it, because that's the utter separation of the judiciary from the Oireachtas. So Your bill might be well-intentioned, Deputy McLaughlin, but you cannot give directions to a court from the parliamentary system. Not on.
Thank you, Taoiseach, and I regret I cannot